Right, Kieran, what is your fifth and final tip, please?
Nobody really knows what they're doing.
I like it. Tell me about this.
Okay, so it's really hard to do this one without offending anybody, and that is definitely isn't my intention. And I'm the worst for accepting this is true, but I will defer far too much to people with experience and expertise, to the point where sometimes if I meet them socially, I will struggle because of how much I don't want to sort of make myself sound silly in front of them. Interviewing Peps was really difficult because I had so much respect for his intellect. I'm thinking, right, okay, I'm going to have to cut everything I said in this this episode. But really, it's a mental health or mental space tip. I think we should always strive to be better. We should learn from people who are more experienced, but I don't think we should beat ourselves up that we aren't other people, or that we seem to be making mistakes that other people don't make. I always talk about how the universe is maybe 14 billion years old, and a bad lesson hasn't ended it yet, so maybe it's not going to be career ending if we make a mistake. But like I say, I will spend hours when I'm supposed to be sleeping worrying about things that happen at work. So I need to take this advice myself, and we acknowledge that everybody's just muddling along the same, regardless of their position in sort of the system, and the default attribute of most teachers is that they want to help other people. So ask them for help, and give yourself a break from time to time.
It's a really, really important one, that, Kieran. When I started the Tips for Teachers thing, I really wanted, obviously, the pedagogical advice, but also this kind of stuff. And Jamie Tom did a similar thing about turning down the negativity radio, he describes it as, where you teach 4 decent lessons, but 1 crap lesson, and that's the crap one's the only one that you think about. When I did my Mr. Bart Maths podcast, my favourite question to ask was, what's your favourite failure? Because then people like Dylan William and Peps would say, look, I messed up by doing this, and it's quite refreshing to hear as a teacher trying your best that the so-called greats also struggle. And you're absolutely right. Everybody has struggles from time to time. The only thing I just wanted to say about this is Twitter's an interesting one for this, Kieran, because it can be, I would say it's my single best source of ideas, where I see people kind of sharing things and I think, wow, that is really, really good. But it can also make you feel bad in a couple of ways. Firstly, there are some idiots on there who just, take everything out of context and try and upset you. But also, it's this fear of missing out thing we spoke about before, where you're seeing people who are doing things and you think, I'm not doing good enough for that. There's a secondary school teacher, Helen Constantine, who designs some of the best questions I've ever seen in my life. And I think, I'm nowhere near that level. My kids are dipping out because I'm not doing that. So Twitter's an interesting one, isn't it? Because you kind of want to be on there to get the ideas, but very rarely do I leave it feeling like a better person or a better teacher. It's tricky, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a pretty healthy block mute process, because I don't think people go on Twitter to, when they speak on Twitter, it's not necessarily to engage in meaningful dialogue, and the form restricts it. So really what you want to do is you want to embrace the echo chamber, and okay, here are some people who I really respect. I'm going to see what they have to say, and if people are out to be bad faith actors, well then I have no interest, so I'm going to block or I'm going to mute, maybe not in that order. But yeah, it's difficult because I think across the spectrum, Adam Buxton does a podcast, and I think at the start of his, he used to make fun of Twitter all the time. It's a place for reasonable discussion and stuff.
Yeah.
He's absolutely right, and if they're having similar issues, then there's not much hope for us. But I think in terms of switching off, I will physically switch my phone off, because it's very hard to resist. And I remember Doug Lemov either tweeted about it or he wrote it in one of his books about the experiment where the only way your attention wasn't going towards your phone was when it was switched off and in a different room. Even if it was switched off in the same room, you were still, students were still looking at it, or whoever the study was. So yeah, so I tried smartphone free, like Bruno Reddy, for a while, but I was missing too many important phone calls because the signal wasn't good enough. So it turned off in a different room, and we go from there. But yeah, it's far from a perfect model.
That's very good. And last question on this, Kieran. Let's imagine you've had a bad day, lessons haven't gone well, and so on. How are you dealing with that? How are you kind of stopping yourself, because I'm terrible at it. I lie awake, as you mentioned before, thinking about it. What works for you to switch you off it?
So, I mean, I started the Thinking Deeply podcast during lockdown when there was a lot more free time, and if that was going to continue, then I needed to be more specific about when I was going to do it and what would constitute acceptable amount of time in my evening. So we've actually carved out, there's one night a week, that's when recording happens, and then we've got a selection of activities that my wife and I will do when the kids have gone to bed. And so we'll think, okay, do you want to do the puzzle, do you want to do the paint by numbers? And that for us at the moment works, and I think weekends are becoming busier because we're allowed outside and things. But yeah, because I was definitely at risk at one point of spending far too much time editing podcasts that didn't need to be edited anymore. I'm sure you can relate.
Yeah.